You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 641, our breakdown of Shadow of Maul. This is the first issue to a prequel series of comics that's coming out ahead of Maul Shadow Lord, which will be coming out April 6th. And we had a chance to get a pre-review of the comic, and we're going to break it down tonight. So as with me always is Chris. Chris, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really stoked to break this comic down. I think it's the perfect start for this comic series, and it's going to get us real excited for the show in about a month.
No, yeah, less than a month now at this point. So, well, no, it's like I said, it's about a month. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So, before we get into the breakdown, I got some quick shout outs and thank yous. So, first off, a huge shout out and thank you to Noah Forbes. So, if you guys noticed, we have that pre-roll that's got, the like, subscribe, that whole thing. We've never had music added to it. And I reached out to Noah. He's like a pianist and has done some really cool music, and he had done some Star Wars themes, and he did this version of it. So I had asked him, I was like, hey man, would you be cool if we use that in there? Because before it was just kind of like wind blowing and didn't really have any kind of, pop to it. And he was like, not only did he say yes, but then he went back and remixed it to extend it to like 60 seconds long so we could have it as part of that. So huge thank you for all of that. He's absolutely cool with us using the music. It didn't get flagged by YouTube or anything, so that's even better. So eat your heart out, Pete Townsend. That version I think is better. No, yes, it is better than that. So if you guys are interested, I did have his name there at the bottom. So Noah, it's NOJAH 1999. So Noja 1999 is his Instagram. Give him a follow. Thank him for the pre-roll if you don't mind. So excited about that. Also, we have a new member of Patreon. So welcome, Will I Am. No relation to Black Eyed Peas artist Will I Am. He's now joined the now part of the tribe member tier. So thank you for joining that. Hopefully you're finding all the stuff that we've got back there. We've got a lot more shows coming out that are Patreon exclusives. And just excited to have you on, man. He's been pretty active too in Discord and some other things as well. So thank you so much, Noah, for that. As well as the rest of the thank yous. Yeah, man. Thank you. As well as the rest of the thank yous to all of our Patreon members. So they are now part of the tribe members, the rest of those folks. Alex, Danny, Dante, Daz, I've got a Brad feeling, Jackson, Jacob, Josh, Mike Borda, Paisley, Rita Reborn, Sharkman Dan, Uncle Leon, and now Will I Am. And our Delusions of Grandeur members, which are now this is Rod Racing, Steve, and Rob. If you guys are interested in Patreon, you can head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon, or you can scan the QR code in the top right or left. Not sure where it's coming out on your screen, but there's a Patreon QR code that you can scan that. It'll take you to Patreon. And we've got a lot of stuff back there, a lot of shows that we've done over the years that are Patreon exclusives. We've got some that are coming up here, of course, every week. So we do one Patreon show a week and one public show a week. Be honored and thrilled and very appreciative if you guys could go out there and support the show. All right.
Absolutely.
Programming notes. All right. So we got a couple things going on. So as of today, March 4th, our interview with Adam Christopher is out now. So we actually released this on Patreon a couple of days ago, I think on Sunday. And today's Wednesday. It's just released out to the public. So you can find that on YouTube now. Or if you want the audio version, wherever you get podcasts or listen to this podcast, you can listen to Lauren and I's interview with Adam Christopher. Now, we do talk a lot about, almost exclusively, 99% of that discussion is really about Master of Evil, his latest best-selling novel. And even though you may not have read the novel, if you go back and if you watch it or listen to it, there are things that we talk about that are thematically interesting and intriguing. Like we're not just talking about the specifics, we're talking about some really high concept type stuff. So I think it's very accessible to even if you haven't read the book, just because of the nature of the conversation that we get into. So highly recommend everybody go out and take a look at that. Adam's a huge supporter of the show, friend of ours. We've met up with him at Celebration before, and just couldn't say thank you enough for coming out and doing that interview with us finally. I know it took a while to get scheduled, but we finally got it done, and I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. So that's out there now on, again, YouTube and on anywhere you get your podcast for the audio. this Sunday, we have another Patreon exclusive. And by the looks of it, it looks like we're going to get our first little maybe mini wave or tsunami to be determined amount of news regarding the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that's coming out. So Empire Magazine today hinted that they had something coming tomorrow. I think it was a little picture of like Grogu and Shadow. And so this is common, especially given that we're about a couple months away now. We're going to start getting some of this. The publications start revealing things, and they have exclusive interviews, or maybe it's a BTS reel, or we're not exactly sure just what it is yet. But usually this stuff is, it's got enough material and meat in it that we can actually put a show together. So Chris and I will be back on Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central here to do a Patreon exclusive and break down that, as well as a couple of other news bits that have come out. We had some shots or some images that were released of a particular hut of interest. And Chris and I were already kind of theorizing what he was holding and how those weapons worked. Of course, I'm speaking about Road to the Hut. But we'll kind of aggregate any of the news that's come out here recently around Mando and Grogu and put that together for a Patreon show. Again, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Please join us if you're a Patreon member for the video portion, and we will have the audio portion of that released that night as well. All right. And then the final thing that I've got before we get into our breakdown is we're going to try something new this Friday. So I don't know what to call this. I'm calling it SWTOR Replay. Very quickly, as some of you may or may not know, this show originally was started because it was covering SWTOR, Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO game that is still going on and still kicking after, 13, 14 years at this point. And, I've always been a fan of it. I've played it. I've always said that it's my favorite Star Wars game because it is. And someone who's been on this show before, she used to play SWTOR with me and we used to stream it on Twitch. She's coming back to play the game again. And we thought, you know what, why don't we just turn this into like a hangout type thing? So this Friday night, around 10:30 p.m. Central, it's going to be a later start time for some folks. I get that. But we're going to be playing the game. You can see us playing the game, but then we're also just going to invite people to come in and hang out. So it's just kind of like a hang out and talk, and anything goes. We can talk about Star Wars. We can talk about whatever you want. But we just thought it was a lazy excuse for both of us to get back to playing again and still be, available and accessible to everybody that wants to just talk Star Wars or whatever. So Friday night, 10:30 p.m., pretty laid back. It's chill. There's nothing like formal about it. We don't have like a format or anything. So again, that's open to anybody that's part of our Patreon, whether you're a free member or one of the paid members. As long as you're a Patreon member, you'll see the invite inside the Patreon app, and you can click that link and jump in there with us. So lots going on. All right, let's get into our breakdown of Broken Law, which is this first issue of Shadow of Maul. Quickly, I want to say thank you first off to Marvel Comics for allowing us to get the preview, get this in. We got this in on Monday, so that we could prepare for the show and create all the show notes and do everything. So huge thank you for them and everything. Those guys are great. They're really awesome to work with. We do appreciate that. This comic is written by Benjamin Percy, and the artist is Madibek Musabekov. Now, you guys might remember when we broke down Jedi Knights. We've talked about Jedi Knights. We've talked about a couple of different comics that have come out now under that title. And I've been in love with this guy's work ever since the first couple of issues. And we can get into all of the, our pros and cons here in just a second. But I thought maybe, Chris, I'll turn it over to you to kind of give us your initial non-spoiler thoughts about the comic before we get into spoiler territory a little bit later. So remember, this title just came out today. So some folks haven't even gotten home yet. They've not read it yet. I totally get that. So if you're listening to the show or watching the podcast or watching the video right now and you don't want to be spoiled, we'll do some non-spoiler stuff first. And then I would recommend turning it off. And then if you're going to read it, go read it and then come back and play this. Okay. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you. What are your, non-spoiler thoughts about the comic and how it's kind of being set up ahead of that release of Maul Shadow Lord coming in just about a month?
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate what you just said. Thank you, Marvel Comics, for allowing us to get this a couple of days early so that we have the opportunity to break it down today. Thank you so much for letting us have that opportunity. First thoughts, it's a beautifully drawn book. It is a beautifully written comic book. I really enjoyed both those aspects of this comic. And what it does, it looks like it's setting up a story arc or part of the story that seems to be a story arc that's going to be featured heavily, in Maul Shadow Lord. So I think this is a perfect setup for that.
And I would agree. And
yeah, if you guys out there have an interest in setting up the backstory of the upcoming TV show, I would definitely recommend to go pick this up and all the other books in this series. It is a good comic book, and again, it's the perfect starter place for us to get the hype going for Maul Shadow Lord.
to go back to the writing, so Ben Percy is the writer, and I didn't remember what he had done. The name didn't even sound familiar until I went back and looked at some of the stuff that he had done in the past. So he'd worked on Detective Comics for a little bit over at DC.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense, right? Because, you think about, we'll get into the details here in a little bit. That seems to align.
Right.
And then when he came over to Marvel, he was doing Punisher. So they rebooted Punisher I think in the fall of last year at some point. And he came on as the primary writer for that. And he's had a huge positive response to his writing because of the way he wrote Punisher. I got a chance to check out a couple of the issues before, just because I was doing my research. And I'm like, okay, this tracks, right? He's got somebody like, he's got the Detective Comics portion under his belt. He's got Punisher, and he's done other things too. X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
I think he did some Spider-Man runs and stuff. But, when you think about the Punisher and the crime lords and syndicates and all that, it just naturally fits. And so after reading the comic, it makes absolute sense. And what I would say is the comic is very, very good, well written. And I've said this before on the show many times, like, I like comics. I'm going to read comics no matter what. Bad writers, bad art, good art. But it's always nice to have a really good, competent writer behind a comic, because sometimes you don't always get that, unfortunately, in my opinion. But yet here we have somebody who's very well written in terms of how he writes comics. The story is non-linear. So we're not, it's not like, oh, we're just kind of following along a traditional tropey path of things happening. He's kind of jumping things around with the story. It's complex in a lot of ways too. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's thrown in here that we don't have answers to, which will naturally get teased out as the rest of the 5-issue series comes out. But I'm also hoping that some of that will play into the actual television show as well. So, and maybe we can talk about that here towards the very end. So I enjoyed the two main characters. This is not a spoiler because it's already been talked about, but the two main characters, at least as the protagonists, are Captain Lawson and then a security droid by the name of Two Boots. And they had some really good comedic bits. They had some really good comedic moments. The artwork, just to kind of toot, what's his name? Musa Bekov again. He had lots of clean lines with the art and how it's drawn. The way he uses space and the way he uses the panels is super engaging. Like, it's not to the extreme of like the 1990s Image comics where things were just really all over the place. And sometimes you had to like flip the comic around because they decided to make us, a landscape panel or big page or whatever. But he does a lot with the space that he's given, and it really kind of keeps you engaged without losing you as well. Sometimes that can go a little too far. And he's done more, I think, with this book in that regard than he has done in Jedi Knights. Like, he's done some really great work in Jedi Knights, but he's almost gotten a little bit more creative with how he does some of the panels and some of the shots. And we'll show some of the images here in just a little bit. So really, really enjoy it. He also does a really great a good job with his use of angles and some of the shots. If you're thinking about like camera work, for example, just how those things are framed and where the focus is on the panels. Like, so this stuff really matters to me as an avid comic book reader. I love when I feel like I'm being engaged with the artwork, and he does a really great job with that. So overall, I really appreciated the tone of the book. Like, it very much had like Andor vibes at times, because really there's no Force in this first issue at all. They don't really get into the Force. We don't, I don't want to spoil anything in terms of like the Darth Maul content either, but it's very much a gritty, seedy underworld kind of crime story, crime boss, crime lord type story. And he does a really great job with that. So it does set the stage, like Chris said, for potentially what's going to come as we get into Maul rising to power on this planet of Janix. It'll be interesting to see how much of what we see is going to be his ascendancy before he gets to the show, or are they going to use most of the show to show the ascendancy? I'm not really sure where that mixture is yet. I think we'll know by issue maybe 3 or 4 for sure where that's going to go, especially since the TV series or the animated series will be out right now. And then the last thing I'll say is that this town or this city of Janix, where kind of everything is really happening, I got like Gotham City feels from it, Like they talk about it being the city of scum and villainy.
Right.
In fact, they kind of call it out twice in the comic itself, but it's got a very Gotham type look or type feel to it where they've got a security force. They're probably really outnumbered by the bad guys, and it's a perfect breeding place for somebody like Maul to insert himself and rise to power and take advantage of all of the different groups and the power and the money that exist on this planet. So, and it's so far away, it's in the mid rim and it's really kind of untouched right now after the fall of the Republic. So it makes sense that this is a great opportunity and breeding ground, not only for Maul's, initiatives, but for him to ascend to the power of that Shadow Lord, as he may be called. So, anyways, you want to touch on any of that before we get into the spoiler stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the artwork and how this was drawn. Like I said previously, it's beautifully drawn, but there are a couple of frames in this comic book that just pop off the screen or pop off the page, I should say. And they were just so beautifully drawn. So, Musa Bekov did a great job on the whole entire comic is beautiful, but there are some frames in here that just pop off the page, and it was just, they're beautiful to look at. So I really appreciate that. We go back to Percy, and I'm familiar with his work. Being a DC Comics fan, I'm familiar with his works, and obviously, writing for Detective Comics, it's a Batman title, and really with Detective Comics is where you have the more grittier, the more grounded Batman stories that normally have to do with, criminal underworld and whatnot. And then, of course, it's the exact same thing with Punisher.
Right.
But I got the same thing, Gotham City type vibes, a lawless city where essentially the crime underworld runs everything. And it's very much like Gotham City with, the villains, Batman's villains. I forgot the word that you call it.
The antagonist?
No. It's like their group of villains that and I see it used with Batman and Spider-Man a lot.
Sinister Six?
No. I'll watch. It's going to come to me later. But essentially all of, Batman's villain, Joker, Penguin run the show as well as a crime boss like Maroni and Falcone. So, you have those elements in this comic book, and you can totally tell that it's something that Percy did coming from Detective Comics, where, like I said, the stories there are more grounded, they're more set in life, and Batman is not dealing with a supervillain, he's dealing with a criminal underworld that has taken over the city. So I appreciate I was able to tie those two together with the way that he wrote the book. And again, it was beautifully written, beautifully drawn, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
No, 100% agree. Before we get into the spoiler stuff, just quickly, One Up versus CPU chimed in. He says, I love Percy on X-Force and Wolverine during the Krakoa. I hadn't read any of that. Honestly, I saw that he was a writer on that stuff, and I'm so far behind on a lot of the Marvel comics, unfortunately, that I don't know. I need to get off my butt and just read those. But he said, I thought it was pretty good, even if Maul was, I shouldn't put that. It's a little bit of spoiler there. So we'll come back to that comment here in a second. Alex is with us also. And Vader's girl, that's Kat. So Kat, thank you for being here. She's the one that will be doing the live stream with me on Friday night playing SWTOR. So thank you. And I know there are other people that have joined. They just haven't chimed in, and that's totally fine. You don't need to, but feel free to throw any comments or questions that you have in there. Okay. So I think that's probably it. That's about 10 minutes of non-spoiler discussion. We're going to get into the spoilers now. So listen or watch at your own risk. So I thought what we could do is start off with kind of the intro, like the little blurb they gave us at the very beginning of the comic. It kind of sets the stage for the city that we're in here. It says, Janix, a bustling mid-rim metropolis, is home to some of the most unsavory characters the galaxy has to offer. As the captain of the local tactical defense force, Brander Lawson, who's the main character, is trying to keep them all in check. But on these neon-lit streets, a new threat is always lurking just around the corner. Again, it's kind of it gives us those little kind of shady vibes. And what we've got now is we're going to show, this is the front cover. This is the main cover that they've released. There's some really cool alternate covers as well, but this is the main cover here. And let's get into the story. Now, I said it earlier, the story is non-linear, meaning that it kind of jumps around between present, past, and somewhere in between the present and the past by about a week. So what I thought it would be easiest to do for the kind of the breakdown of the comic is just kind of keep these in that same order, but group them up. So we're going to talk about all the stuff that happens now. Then we'll talk about the stuff that happens a week ago. And then we'll talk about the stuff that happens in between there, and then kind of end with what I think is probably now as well. And that's just kind of the last cliffhanger there. So we open up on Janix, and this is Captain Lawson here. You can kind of see him on screen. He is a former bounty hunter. We learned that very briefly in there. We'll see if that plays into the comic at all a little bit later. But again, he is the captain of this tactical defense force, TDF. And you see he's got some guys that we'll show here in a little bit that work for him, and they say they have like TDF and Orbesh written on their uniforms. Let's see, we got he's being interrogated at the headquarters along with his cop buddy, which is Two Boots, and you don't really see him here. We'll see him in a little bit, but he's being interviewed by this gentleman by the name of Claverine Rule, who is part of the Internal Investigations Department. You see him here. He's kind of a slimy guy. They portrayed him to be as such, anyways. But he's being interviewed by this gentleman here because Rule has found out that there's been a death. He's investigating the death of one of Lawson's own guys. So one of his officers named Hendricks has died, as well as another one of his officers named Fraxmore, who has disappeared altogether. And they were along with another one by the name of Jam Jam. All three of these guys were just recently appointed to him as captain. Jam Jam is in critical condition. So something really horrible went wrong. And he's trying to investigate it and figure out what it is that's going on. Now, Lawson doesn't give him any information. I mean, at one point during the interview, Lawson tells Rule that one of the men mentions that one of the men has like a red cybernetic hand. That plays into this a little bit, but that person was also corrupt, and we'll learn who that is in just 1 second here. And then Rule tries to pin Lawson down on confessing that he was resentful because he just got these newly appointed officers, and that maybe that had something to do with the corruption. But Lawson just kind of pushes it aside and says, no, this bureau has been corrupt for a long time. So we talked about Gotham, right, and the kind of vibes. This is definitely one of those vibes where we know that the Gotham police, have been infiltrated, and they're, for sale at times, and Joker and a number of other villains have taken advantage of that. Kind of get the sense here too that they are for hire in some ways, and I think that's going to be what we'll see a little bit later, especially based on some of the solicitation information that we got for upcoming issues. But this whole kind of interview doesn't go very long. In fact, Lawson, it's a little bit of a comedic bit, says that he's only there until his coffee runs out. Well, eventually his coffee runs out, and he decides to get up and leave. And Lawson then tells him, as he's walking away, he says that, hey, this is an internal investigation, or this is an ongoing investigation. I really can't share any information with you on what happened to my three people. And then him and Two Boots decide to just walk out and leave. And you can see right here that Rule is yelling at him, saying that, hey, you're not done here, Lawson, come back, kind of thing. And he just leaves. And so that's kind of like the first part of it. But I guess any thoughts, any comments, anything you want to add to this first section of it before we go flashback to a week and really get into the events that happened that led up to his three people getting murdered, disappearing, and in critical condition?
Yeah, I thought this part of the story was actually what kind of reeled me in. Obviously, something happened, and this investigator Rule's trying to get to the bottom of it, and this reeled me in immediately. I like the way that Percy wrote how cavalier Lawson was. He's just like, yeah, when I'm done with my calf, I'm out, and that's essentially what it. And I like that little interaction, like right at the end, where he's like, don't get in my way. At the end there, so, it's very right there. It's very Batman / Commissioner Gordon type of interaction that you see sometimes in the Batman comics, because I know in visual media, like in the cartoons and the movies, Gordon and Batman get along okay, I guess, but in the comic books they actually butt heads quite often, and that's what it kind of reminded me of. And I swear he probably wrote something like that for Detective Comics, but this pretty much reeled me in, and I was now curious to see how did they get to this place, and why is IA like really, really trying to dig into Lawson because of this? Is it an ulterior motive, or are they truly trying to find out what happened, or are they trying to keep him from digging up some more skeletons out from the ground that they don't want dug up. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here, but it's really setting up the story really well.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but the way he's drawn and the way he's portrayed, like I said, he comes across as being sleazy or slimy.
Sleazy, exactly. No, he reminds me how he looks, and I can't remember the name, but the doctor that kept the children imprisoned on the Bad Batch, and had the doctor that had all the children there in that facility. Yeah. He reminded me of him, and that guy was sleazy as you can all get out. So I agree with you. I think he may have an ulterior motive to try to keep Lawson from continuing what he's doing.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't considered that. Like, there's something not right about this guy, but yeah, he may be working for someone else, or like you said, trying to keep things covered up in some way. I think that would make more sense given how he comes across in this issue.
Yeah. So, and again, the writing here, like I mentioned, I have to really give props to Percy for the way he wrote this book. And you talked about how writing can really make a difference in a comic book versus just having your standard comic book or graphic novel or whatever. But then you have someone who comes in and who actually is passionate about writing and actually writes a great story. That gives you books like, All-Star Superman, The Dark Knight Returns, books like that. So I really appreciate good writing. Comic books, you want to see the illustrations, you want to see the what's drawn in the frames, but really if you have good writing, that takes it to another level.
So yeah, pretty happy with what he did here. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage, and let's flash back now to about a week before all of this even happened, right? And so we learned that Captain Lawson. Let me go back over here to. So Captain Lawson are trying to. Him and Two Boots are on an assignment, and they are trying to take down some. I don't know. I guess a crime syndicate. There's a gentleman by the name of Demas. Who is kind of like they haven't really said who he is, other than he's a corrupt crime person and he's running a couple different rings or something. And they are trying to get him to come in, and so they send Lawson into this kind of like bar, and in this bar there is a. I was trying to find my notes here. Here we go. Okay. So he's basically, there's a sting going on, right? He goes into this bar, and what he learns is that these guys are using these very venomous creatures and extracting the venom from them. And they're like using this on the black market for people to like murder and kill other people. Right. And so he comes in here trying to figure out who's doing what and kind of get this main person who's called Demas. Well, this thing goes really horribly wrong all of a sudden out of nowhere. In fact, there's, you can kind of see him here. This is him in the bar. And in the background, they've got like this, almost like a showcase, right? Like you can go in and you can see all the different species of creatures that they have. And the people down here in Shadow, those are like the, what did they call them? Those are the, I don't know, shoppers, I guess, right? They're the ones that are looking at these things and picking them out. So these guys are bad as well. He goes up to the bartender, orders a drink, and after he takes the drink, he realizes that bartender has put a venom in there. He's put some poison in there from one of these creatures, and it starts impacting Lawson. And so he realizes, holy crap, something's not right here. They knew we were coming. Now, all the while this is going on, you've got Two Boots in his ear saying, do you want me to go in now? Do you want me to go in? Do you want me to go? And it's kind of funny, right? It's not, it's again, he's kind of more, brings a little bit levity and more of the comic relief, as droids generally do in Star Wars. And he's kind of telling him like, no, not yet. And then as soon as he realizes he's poisoned, he's like, get in here quickly. I need you now.
That whole series of events there reminded me so much of K2SO and Cassian Andor. It just reminded me so much of that. I really enjoyed reading that.
Yeah, and Two Boots does have, I would agree, like he does have a lot of personality traits and features that are similar to K2SO. Just the way he kind of carries himself, and he's very literal at times, and he says things that are more for comedic relief, even though he doesn't probably take them that way. We definitely do. But so after he takes that drink and he realizes he's poisoned, that bartender then decides to go after Dawson here. And I think I've got a picture where he's about to like hurt him. Yeah, he kind of pulls out this like sledgehammer thing. And that's when Two Boots finally shows up and kind of intervenes. You can see one of the creatures here. Two Boots shows up. That's him down there. And you can see one of these big creatures that's coming out. Because what happened was the hammer got thrown and he mist hit the glass, it broke free this creature and like a spider creature and a number of other ones. And so like mass hysteria is broken out, right? You've got people running out of the bar. You've got Two Boots in here trying to fight off these creatures. You've got Lawson, who's starting to really lose sense of his limbs and he's becoming numb. The poison's really starting to have a really bad effect on him. And it kind of ends here. Well, it ends there. So they end up going back to the station after all this is over. It kind of ends with him kind of like passing out. And when they get back to the station, he's kind of reprimanded for like, look, you blew this. And he's like, what are you talking about? We did an amazing job. We took this whole thing down. And they're quick to point out that, look, not only did, was the bar destroyed, but all the clients got away, the people that were shopping for these creatures that they could have pinned down. The account list of everybody that was purchasing or has purchased, that got destroyed. And, oh, by the way, you almost died. And now we don't have anything to pin on this Demas crime lord that we were going after. So it really was kind of a failed mission in a lot of different ways. But the key point of takeaway here is that someone tipped them off. Like someone told this bartender or this establishment that Lawson was on his way in there, and that's why everything went south. And so now they've got a mole in the police force, right? And so he kind of makes that, he lets everybody know, look, there is a mole there. We should also note at one point in one of these panels, one of the guys that's sitting at the bar has a cybernetic red hand. They just kind of show him briefly. It's kind of a clue as to that maybe that's the mole, which we get confirmation of almost immediately, just a few more pages later down the road. But we'll talk about that here in a second. So as a reward or maybe as a punishment for how things went at this bar establishment, Lawson is then assigned 3 new people to his team. And so he's given these 3 new people. You've got Hendrix, who's on the left-hand side there, the character of Jam Jam, who's in the middle. And then you've got Fraxmore, who is the alien creature on the right. So that's kind of the next phase. And I wasn't really sure if this was punishment or not. I've got some questions, maybe not more, I don't know, rhetorical about why he was given these folks. Maybe because they wanted to, there's probably some ulterior motives maybe as to why he got these folks, right? But I think what they were trying to do is say, look, you need more people, you need more folks to do more investigations and really get down to this. And so he gets assigned these 3 guys. But I'll pause there, and before we get to the last part of it, and get your thoughts.
So yeah, back to the whole, actions, sequence where, the poisonous monsters get released and, Lawson is poisoned. There are a couple of great frames there, especially that there are those 4 frames that were in a row where I think you might have had it up here where he's taking the drink and then he realizes he's poisoned. I thought those were beautiful. Right. Yeah. Right there. That was beautifully drawn. I think that captured that. I was able to visualize that. And that's when, you have some good artists working here where you can actually visualize it in your head, actually him taking that drink. And that's what I was able to do. Beautifully drawn here. And then, you talk about writing, and I don't think you have it up here, Albert. There was a couple of panels where Two Boots is in trouble and he needs help, and he's thinking to himself, inside his head, he's like, he needs to try to save Two Boots by blasting this spider, it was dialogue that I thought was really well written. And I thought it really hit the spot to give us a description of what kind of, I guess, peace officer Lawson was, and kind of hint to what he's done in the past. Right. And it starts about where he's like, even when my hands are shaking and my vision's gone wobbly, I don't trust anyone's aim but my own. Yeah. And it shows him actually taking a clean shot at that, spider thing that had ensnarled Two Boots, and then he passes out and saying, maybe that'll be the end of me, but I go out my way, or my own way, and that kind of gives you an idea of the character of Lawson and what we can expect from him moving forward, not just in this comic series, but also when he shows up in Maul Shadow Lord.
Yeah, well, hopefully he shows up in Maul Shadow Lord, but yeah. So yeah, no, that's a great point. Like some of that may be, the fact that he's the captain, or maybe they're harking back to his bounty hunter days, right? Not trusting anybody but himself. Kind of, I'm here for myself. Is most bounty hunters are. So yeah, great point. All right, so he's assigned these 3 people here, and then we go kind of in between present day and last week, right? So a few days, couple I guess passed by, and it starts off with Lawson and his 3 new recruits, and they're kind of talking about, okay, they're looking at all the different wanted. There's basically 3. I guess I'd call them crime bosses or triads or whatever you want to call, right?
Mhm.
And you can see the 3 of them here. Some of these 3 are going to show up in future comics because we've seen the covers for some of them, especially the guy in the middle. I think he shows up on the second cover. I don't think we have a name just for him just yet, but he basically says, look, this whole area of Janix is led by these three primary crime bosses. He tells them that there's a woman now that is in an apartment safe house somewhere. And this woman is willing to speak out on where, she has information about Demas. And the reason why she wants to share this information is because her brother was poisoned, which seems to be a big thing going on around in Janix.
Mhm.
But her brother was poisoned at some kind of a wedding or something. And so she wants revenge against Demas. And now she wants to speak out. So they put her in the safe house to keep her safe and so until they can meet with her and get more information. And so their first assignment is to go to the safe house, take shifts, and protect her overnight. And that's what leads us to kind of this next section here. And so the first one that gets assigned duty to watch over in front of the safe house is this character Jam Jam, which you can see here. So he's sitting there. It's quiet. And suddenly the lights turn out completely. You can see it kind of turns red down here. Somebody starts opening fire on him, and eventually there is a grenade. It looks like a thermal detonator, but I've seen other grenades that aren't as powerful as thermal detonators now in Star Wars pop up. So, and honestly, if this was a thermal detonator and that's how close it was, he would be obliterated. Like there's nothing left of him. So it is some kind of a grenade nonetheless, but there's a grenade that's thrown his way, and sure enough, it blows up. Well, we get the immediate reveal of who it was that blew up or threw the grenade, and it turns out to be Hendrix. So one of his own guys, which you can see here. This is the guy with the red cybernetic hand. He's holding the pistol there on the right hand side, and so that big explosion there is where Jam Jam is. And you think in the panel, I was like, oh, he's dead. There's no way he survived. Later on, he does have a pulse, and that's why he ends up in critical condition at either the very end of the book or the start of the book, as this case may be. And so it turns out that it is, again, Hendrix that is now going in, and he's trying to kill this woman that they have in the safe house or actually he wants to take her alive. Sorry. So details, he goes into the room. He kind of has his, villain monologue moment where he says that Demas, doesn't want you dead. So I'm here to take you in. And really what they did is kind of set him up. So at one point when they say, look, it's just only 5 of us know, it's the 3 of you guys, right? My new recruits, myself, Lawson, and 2 Boots. We're the only 5 people that know that this person's here. And so he kind of did that to really find out who the mole was in his group, right? And so what they did is they staged 2 Boots inside the apartment, even though I don't think the girl was ever there. I don't even know if that was really a true story. It could have been just something that was made up. But 2 Boots is in there, and certain enough, he grabs him by the gun here. He stops him, thwarts him, if you will, and then as he's holding him up, he arrests him essentially. And Lawson comes over there and realizes that, Hendrix is, one of his guys, and he's the mole. Somewhere, somebody shoots Hendrix just out of nowhere. You can see the blaster bolt come in and kill him immediately. And so this, of course, freaks him out. They'd never find who that person is. But yeah, and that kind of brings us up to speed on what the backstory was. So now he's got Hendrix dead. He's got Jam Jam in critical condition. And Fraxmore, who's that alien character, has now just disappeared. Like, they don't know where he left to, where he went to, but he's gone. And so that leads us into kind of issue 2. Issue 2 is going to pick up right there where he's in search of Fraxmore. We'll talk about that here in a second, because again, the solicitations already went out for it. We can talk about what that looks like. But yeah, that's kind of how the comic ends. There is one last piece of it here. I don't know. Do you want to comment on this, or do you want to roll into the Cena system next?
No, I thought that when I saw this go down and the way that it was explained, when they were back at the headquarters, and they talked about those 3 crime lords and Demas, and then that the sister of the brother that was killed at the wedding, that smelled of setup by Lawson to try to figure out who the mole was, or to get confirmation, because he was in that bar, did notice the red cybernetic hand, and then kind of
he was
moved
putting
forward.
it all together.
So he this was probably so that he can get confirmation that Hendrix was the mole in the group. And so I think this was completely a setup. I kind of smelled it a mile away. I think you said you didn't know if that story was real. I think that story is real. I just think that they used it to try to set up Hendrix to come in and try to, do something to take the girl alive and take him back to Demas they wanted. So it was a setup, but I thought the way it was written, and again, the comic was written beautifully. And I thought, if you weren't like a avid comic book reader, you wouldn't have seen that. But I thought that was a perfect setup that they did to try to weed out the mole. And then the one thing I did not see coming is someone taking them out, a la Jango Fett taking out Zam Wessel in episode 2. Right. So I did not expect that. And so that was a surprise. I thought that Hendrix would play a role in being a snitch, but no, the crime syndicate and Demas, they took him out.
Yep. No, or so we think, right? I mean, it's
true.
That's the thing about this this comic, and I guess some of the writing is like there were some things that I didn't expect. Like this is another one. You're exactly right. I was not anticipating this. I was like, okay, we're following along some similar territory here, even though we were kind of in a non-linear story. But I did not anticipate that Hendrix was going to get killed, especially since they showed him at the very beginning of the comic. They really emphasized the red hand, and I thought, okay, well, he's going to play some larger role in this, and that turns out not to be the case. So
right, exactly.
Yeah, unless he comes back to life, which in Star Wars, no one's ever really gone. I'm just kidding. I think he's dead. He was pretty much shot, like obliterated. I mean, they even they did the Thum, which you can kind of see there, which in Marvel Comics means that's a pretty big shot. That he took there.
You see, I know I haven't read many Star Wars comics, but when in comics where Chewbacca shoots his bowcaster, it has those big words describing the sound of the blast, and we all know the bowcaster is a very powerful weapon. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Hendrix is gone, but like you said, we don't know. We'll find out more in issue 2.
Right. Hopefully we do. Okay, and then the very last piece of this, and this is where I was like, okay, we're getting Force Awakened vibes here, and this is what one of us CP was talking about. I'll throw the comment back up. He says, I thought it was pretty good, even if Maul was only on one page. And that is the case. It turns out to be the case. He's technically in like maybe 2 panels or 3 panels total. But they did kind of save him to the very end, which I think is fine because this was set up as a prequel. It's not, and they've got to do a lot with the comic, right? In the animated series, they're just going to probably just jump right in. We're going to start with Maul. That's what we want to see, etc. But the comic is a nice way to kind of do all the backstory and you really kind of give you that context that you may or may not want, but is present should you want it, trying to understand how all of this plays into the larger picture. So, but we do get just a couple more panels here. We're now on the Cena system, which I don't know where the hell that is. It's far away. And someone, shocker who that is, but someone has secured passage to the city of Janix. And they also need these legal chain codes as well. So you've got this gentleman right here who's got a ship. You can see a ship there in the background. He's also talking to somebody that you can he's almost talking like in first person, looking right at the camera, if you will, and is talking about, look, I've got a ship. I know you want to stay in the shadows. That's my specialty kind of thing. And I've got all kinds of legal chain codes that you can use to change your identity to whoever you want to be. And so with all of that, right as they get on the ship, it turns out that person is, of course, Darth Maul. And Maul takes his lightsaber out, cuts him in half, which you can see half of his body on the left-hand side there and the other half down here on the bottom. But cuts him in half and then, tells him that, what was the word here? His line was, now that my terms of my passage have been arranged, Jarix awaits. And that says to be continued. And that's literally how it ends. So we get to see Maul briefly stand. I think there's one panel where he's standing with his double-bladed lightsaber after he cuts this dude in half. And then he get this one right here where he's kind of in shadow, of course. He's got the hood on and he's on his way to Janix. So that's where it ends. That's kind of the initial setup. Again, there's 5 issues to this, so there's still a lot more story to be told. I think when I ended with this comic, some of the questions that came to mind were like, how does Darth Maul fit into this? Like, what is he going to do? Where is he going to try to insert himself? Is he going to try to take advantage of the work that the officers are doing to take down the crime lord so that he can take over and rise to power there? Does he try to align himself with some of those crime lords? It can go a lot of different ways, honestly. I'm not really sure. Yeah, let me before I get into kind of the solicitations for issue 2 and issue 3, anything you want to touch on or add to, I guess, Darth Maul's only appearance here in those last 2 pages of the comic?
Well, I thought it was perfect. I mean, I really think that this series, while it is, you know, labeled a Maul comic book or a Maul comic series, I really think that what we're gonna get the majority of the time is Maul will be present, but we're going to get some explanation for the other characters that are going to play parts in Maul Shadow Lord. So I think the way that they handled it and the way that, you know, we only saw Maul at the very end of the comic, I think that was the right thing to do. I think it was beautifully done. Here's this frame right here. Again, beautiful. It just, the way it was drawn, it pops off the page, and it just looks incredible. Maul here looks menacing. You know, he's giving the side eye with his Sith eyes. I think it looks amazing. And typically what we would expect from Darth Maul, you know, essentially taking what he needs. Right. As far as like how the whole crime boss drama and what's going on Janix, what I think, and again, this is just an opinion, you know, based off what I've read and heard so far. I think what's going to happen is, you know, Lawson is going to go in there and maybe take a couple of those guys down. And, you know, in the crime world, and not that I'm an expert in the crime world or I have any ties to the crime world, so don't start getting ideas. When there's vacuums of power, that's when other people will jump in and take their place. You know, we kind of saw it in the Book of Boba Fett, where, you know, essentially the Hutt twins were in charge of Tatooine, using Bib Fortuna as a puppet. You know, that's what I think. This is probably going to, in my opinion, this series is going to kind of introduce that vacuum. And then when we get into the TV show, maybe it shows Maul attempting to take that place, that, you know, to fill that void. So we'll see. But that's what I think is going to set up with this comic series. But mainly, I think we're going to get some backstory to some of the supporting players of Maul Shadow Lord. And I think that's good, because when we go in and watch that show with context, even though Filoni and you know, Sam Witwer has been making the rounds recently too, saying that you don't have to really know Star Wars and a lot of the backstory to enjoy it. And I believe that, but we talked about this on several shows previously, Albert, that us hardcore Star Wars fans, we want to know the details, right?
Yeah.
So I think reading this comic, it's going to fill those details for us. And so when we watch the show, we're going to feel a little bit more, I don't know if you want to say fulfilled, but we're going to feel a little bit more complete knowing some of the backstories and the challenges that the supporting characters have had to go through to get to that point.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. So, so let's quickly talk about the solicitations. For anybody that doesn't know, solicitations are when comic books come out, usually about 3 months before the issue comes out, they solicit to all of the retailers. So they send out because they have to put the orders in, right? So they do these, I won't get into the specific details, but they release these tiny little blurbs. Sometimes there's more if they really want to push it. And sometimes they release like a lot of art that goes with it as well. But it's really to kind of entice retailers to put in orders and buy lots of these comics because they're going to sell like hotcakes, kind of thing, right? So in that sense, we do get some insight into what's coming up with future issues, but they really aren't spoilerish per se. Like there's really not a whole lot in there. Sometimes they can be, but for the most part, they do try to keep it, you know, pretty kosher. So if you're really sensitive to spoilers and you stay away from solicitations, I would say then just, you know, shut this off now. But I did want to talk about it because it does confirm a couple different things for us. So issue number 2, which will be out April 8th. So this is 2 days after the premiere episode of Maul Shadow Lord comes out. But 2 days after that, very quickly, it says the underworld explodes with scum and villainy as Maul looms in the shadows. So we know Maul is finally on Janix, at least for this issue. It also says ruthless mercenaries are looking to unload Imperial treasure. So we're getting a new story element, right there, of Imperial treasure now that somehow come into Janix. Whether it's on Maul's ship or maybe it's a recent heist or something gone wrong, but now people are going to be after this because it says crime lord Demas, who was mentioned in this first comic, will stop at nothing to get it. So it's kind of maybe a MacGuffin in some ways that they're all after this, maybe gold or imperial treasure, whatever that looks like. And then the last one says, will Captain Lawson be able to thwart the exchange of the smuggled fortune? So he's going to be a part of trying to thwart whatever this imperial treasure exchange that's happening between two parties, Demas and whoever's got the treasure. So no mention of Maul per se, other than he's there. And that makes sense because I assume that once he gets to Janix, he's got to get a lay of the land, right? He's not going to just go in and start killing people, or maybe he will, but he does have to figure out, how do I insert myself? How do I rise to power and take advantage of those relationships that exist today? So think of Kingpin from like Marvel and Daredevil, right? Same kind of concept or thinking. And then issue number 3 says betrayal on Janix. So we've got some level of betrayal. And that is, it says Lawson is hunted by an assassin and an officer from his own department. So that was interesting too, because now we know Hendrix is gone, right? He's dead. So is it Fraxmore? Was he a mole also? Could it be Rule, the guy at the very beginning? Maybe he's, behind it, or maybe he is that person, but somebody's after Lawson in this third issue. And then it says help comes from an unlikely ally, a crime lord named Vario, who has his own hidden agenda. So in issue 3, we're going to be introduced to yet another crime lord by the name of Vario. It sounds like he's going to align himself with Lawson in some way. And, maybe he's working with the devil in those sense. Maybe Vario is a name that Maul gives himself, right? To kind of hide who he is and, right. Very almost like Palpatine kind of thing. It's a moniker that he's using. And then it says, lastly, the last bullet on the third issue says, and Maul begins his preparation for a job in Janix by kidnapping a member of the police force. So somebody on the police force is important to Maul as part of his agenda, that he needs to kidnap him and use him either as collateral, maybe information. I don't really know. But it looks like this is where those roads are going to cross, right? Maul is finally, if he's going into the police force and kidnapping somebody, that's going to intersect with Lawson and Two Boots. So you can kind of see where this is all coming together. So by issue 3, it feels like we're going to be in the thick of things, leaving 4 and 5 to kind of wrap things up before we get into what happens in the very first episode of Maul Shadow Lord. So I don't know, anything you want to add to those?
No, I agree. I think the second issue 2 is going to be kind of like a thriller type. Like, is Captain Lawson going to be able to thwart, Demas getting that treasure? And we all know by watching shows like Andor that the Imperials don't take kind to having their property taken and then especially fenced out to others, So I think potentially we could see some have an Imperial entanglement, but I think that's going to be like a suspense. Like, how is he going to get this done? Is he going to be able to stop and thwart Demas from acquiring this Imperial treasure? Issue 3 is going to be busy as heck. I think we're going to have a lot going on in issue 3. That's going to be probably a pretty deep, long, when we break that issue down, it's going to be a pretty deep and long episode, because it sounds like issue 3 is going to have a lot going on. And I'm really excited to read that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll continue to do this. So every issue, it's once a month. And of course, these will come out even after the TV series is started, which is fine because, again, this is the prequel stuff. I guess final thoughts on the comic. Again, it's a great comic. Honestly, it's very well written. It's very well drawn. I can't say that I was expecting that. And I'm just really surprised and pleasantly surprised that the quality of the comic's good. Is it for everybody? Probably not. But I think if you're a fan, like if you have to have all the context and want all the details, like I don't see how you not pick this comic up, quite honestly. I would feel a massive case of FOMO by not picking this comic up and just jumping directly into Maul Shadow Lord. So definitely recommend it if you're in that boat, or if you feel like, hey, I don't feel like I necessarily have to have it, but the context would be kind of cool to know. Well, know that if you spend, your $5 on a comic book, you're going to get something that's pretty well written for Star Wars and just comics in general. Like I'm not lowering the bar here. It's a really good written comic. It's a very well drawn comic. And so it's a good quality comic. So I'd recommend anybody pick this up, quite honestly. But again, I do understand that some folks are like, nah, just give me the animated series, and that's totally cool. But you can't go wrong with picking up this comic based on the first issue. I think it was really great. They did a really good job. It was very, again, pleasantly surprised in terms of how well it was written and the quality of the comic. And I'm looking forward to it. Like, I really want to know more about what's going on Janix. And I think, and this is the last thing, this is where the only hesitation that I have with comics like this, where they tell these backstories. I can think of a number of TV series that have done this. If you remember Fringe, a show that came on Fox television almost 15, 20 years ago now, they did like a prequel comic series. When Superman Returns came out, they did a couple, like 4 issues that showed how the symbol looked a little different. His uniform looked different when he came back. This is the Brandon Ruth version of Superman. And so this is not atypical. Like, this is done many times before. My only feedback with a lot of those, and there's more examples, but my only feedback with those examples, or when they do this, is sometimes the story never really has any impact whatsoever in the main animated series or the television series, nor, and that's fine. Like, I can get past that. But then, like, some of the characters and the scenery, or some of the locations, like, they have nothing to do with the main one. And that's where I feel like, okay, I get it. I like the backstory and I loved it, but I really want it to mean something, even if it's just small things, subtle things, like you said, where we mention some of these characters, and they mention, I'm not saying they're going to mention the TDF, I would imagine, right?
Mhm.
But if we find out that what's his name? Froxmore? I forget the guy's name. But if one of these characters actually showed up in the series, that would be really good. I really want that to happen. And it sounds like they were working closely together on this. I could be wrong there, but that would be the only hesitation where I was, I don't want to steer people down the path of like everything that you see in the comic is going to play directly into the animated series, because we just don't have a precedence for that. I hope that's the case, but that may not be the case. So kind of, purchase it, I guess, at your own risk if that is something that's important to you. So, but those are my final comments, my final thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get essentially a prequel comic that just explains like a simple detail that maybe someone might be curious to know why that is. Like, you brought up the prequel comic for Superman Returns, and that explained the change of his costume. I'm familiar with that, and that's just filler. That's just a way to sell a comic book tied to a movie to explain a detail that wasn't going to get explained in the movie.
Right.
But I don't think that's what we're going to get here. I think we're going to get some meat and potatoes out of this comic series, and I think whatever the storyline in this comic series, I think, will play in the TV show to a certain extent. So I'm not worried about that. I think we're going to get real good content, and like you, it's beautifully written. It is beautifully drawn. It is beautifully colored. But if you were looking for, pages and pages of Darth Maul action, that's not this. And I did have someone say, well, it should be, because, Maul is front and center on the cover of the comic. I'm like, yeah, but if you know comic books, you know that you cannot. It's one of those situations where, they say, don't judge a book by its cover. For comic books, that is absolutely
100%
true. 100%
Yes.
true. So yeah, it's setting up, again, I think it's setting up some backstories to secondary characters that are going to play a part in the TV show. And I think that's the way to go, because again, that actually feeds into the storyline of the show versus just having a comic series that explains some details that we may have a question on when we see the show. I think if the story feeds into the TV show story, that will show the girth of this particular series. And I think that's what's going to happen.
All right. I'm hopeful, honestly. So we're looking forward to, we'll see where this goes in the second issue. And again, we'll have our final hype show. I've already scheduled, I put it on the calendar already. By the way, FYI, Chris, it's out there.
Oh yeah.
We've got our final hype show scheduled the week before, of course, as we always do. And so that'll be a fun show, because we'll get to be talking about, this comic and then anything else that's released ahead of that television series or the animated series. So it should be a fun-filled, content-rich type final hype show. That, so that's already coming up. We'll do that here very shortly. So before we get out of here, again, thank you to all of our Patreon members, and thank you everybody that joined us for the live stream. So One Up versus CPU, Alex, Kat, Only Vader's Girl joined us as well. and a number of other people too that didn't chime in. And that's totally cool. Thank you guys for joining, listening, watching the show. Again, if you're listening to the audio, thank you for the download. And then just a couple quick reminders. This Sunday, let me start with this Friday. This Friday, Kat and I, Only Vader's Girl, are going to be doing kind of a SWTOR hangout. So we're going to be playing Star Wars: The Old Republic. Anybody that's a Patreon member, whether you're on the free plan or any of the paid plans, we'll send out a link and you guys can just jump in and we can talk about whatever. It doesn't even have to be Star Wars. You can hang out with us all night long until we fall asleep. So that's coming up on Friday. Sunday, we've got our Patreon show. That'll be a Patreon exclusive where we're going to be breaking down a lot of the news that's coming out, hopefully tomorrow and maybe even on Friday around Mandalorian and Grogu. So Empire Magazine teased a couple things. We are anticipating that we're going to get some more information. So we'll break whatever that is down on Sunday as a Patreon exclusive. And then lastly, don't forget that our Adam Christopher interview. So Lauren and I did an interview with Adam Christopher. That's out on YouTube right now. If you want to watch the video or if you want to download it, go out to wherever you get your podcasts and you can listen to the audio. Very, very insightful. You don't have to have read Master of Evil to kind of get what we're talking about. And there's some really cool concepts that Adam really talks about and we talk about as well. That tie into the book, but are kind of general and innocuous in terms of how they apply to a lot of what we think and feel about Star Wars. So that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for Chris. Any final thoughts, comments before we get out of here?
No, just I want to send my thanks to everyone who joined us tonight, all our Patreon members, and I look forward to the next show on Sunday.
Yep. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining, and we will see you on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.